This video was inspired by Emblement's Art of the Choke. You'll find the link in the description. Now let's get into it. Choking. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, if you choke or if something chokes you, you stop breathing because something is blocking your throat. It can also mean to make someone stop breathing by pressing their throat with your hands. Choking is everywhere. We see it in movies, we hear about it in music, we read about it in the news, and sometimes we even witness it in real life. Did you know that in 2009, Christopher Nolan died after a piece of salmon got stuck in his airway? Or how about in 2002, when George Bush, the 43rd President of the United States, almost died choking on a pretzel?
My mother always said, when you're eating pretzels, chew before you swallow. Listen to your mother.
So from this, we can conclude that assassination attempts come in all shapes and sizes, which brings us back to the point. Choking is no joking matter. It's actually the fourth leading cause of unintentional injury death in the United States. But in football, it often is.
Sig Thorson. Oh my word. Oh.
In sports, choking is the failure of a player or an entire team to perform as expected. It can happen when a team is heavily favored to win but collapses under the weight of expectation, like England against Iceland in 2016. It can also strike when a commanding lead slips away, like England against West Germany in 1970. And sometimes choking is about repeated failures in the same competition, or simply an inexplicable collapse when the moment matters most. In other words, the English national team. As we've seen, choking comes in many shapes and sizes. Not all chokes are created equal. To make sense of it all, we need a system, a way to measure just how severe a choke really is. Introducing the Choke Severity Scale. The CSS ranges from the tiniest slip-ups to the catastrophic disasters. Let's start off with the mildest form of choking. At the very bottom of the scale, we have the blunder. This isn't a catastrophe, it's a glitch in the system, an inexplicable betrayal of muscle memory. These are the little bloopers so bizarre and so out of character that their only legacy is laughter. But a select few live on forever because their sheer ridiculosity made them unforgettable. In the 1999 Copa America, Argentina faced Colombia in what would become a night of infamy for striker Martin Palermo. Argentina were awarded not one, not two, but 3 penalties, all to be taken by Palermo. The first smashed off the crossbar, the second sailed into the stands, and the third was stopped by the Colombian keeper. Palermo still holds the Guinness World Record for the most penalties missed in a single international match. And after that tournament, he didn't play for Argentina again for nearly 10 years. But penalty misses are just one form of footballing embarrassment. For outfield players, there's an even more universal nightmare, the open goal miss. It's a rite of passage in football. Even the very best has done it. Some players are known for doing it regularly, some do it multiple times in a match, while others are remembered forever for just that one unforgettable miss. Take Fernando Torres. At Liverpool, he was the fastest player in the club's history to reach 50 league goals. But after his move to Chelsea, he was a shadow of his former self. And nothing captured that decline better than this moment against Manchester United.
Through here for Torres! He's going to score again! Oh my word! He surely had to score again!
Despite that miss, Torres is still remembered as one of the best strikers of his generation. One moment didn't erase a career full of goals. The same can't be said for Chris Iwelumo. For Scottish fans, his name is forever tied to his debut in the 2010 World Cup qualifier against Norway. A debut overshadowed by one of the worst open goal misses you'll ever see.
That's a brilliant ball, Naismith across! What a miss!
As the Franks managed something even worse.
Gaat die bal tegen de deklat en is er Franks in de rebound die op een of andere manier niet kan scoren.
There's the goal line miss, and then there's the goal line clearance. A job reserved for defenders against the opposition, not against your own teammates. Unfortunately, 2 players misunderstood the assignment. When a shot from Christopher Nkunku was about to cross the line, Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting stuck out a foot and somehow diverted it onto the post, denying a certain goal. And William Akio, who went viral for all the wrong reasons.
Second effort, it dribbles in.
Ironically enough, these players did a better job clearing the ball than a lot of defenders and goalkeepers. In a heated Birmingham derby in 2002, Olof Mellberg took a quick throw-in back to his keeper Peter Enkelman. By the laws of the game, a goal cannot be scored directly from a throw-in. But because the ball was judged to scrape his studs on the way through, the goal was allowed to stand. Debate still lingers to this day over whether it should have counted. There is no such debate over Robert Green's fumble against the United States at the 2010 World Cup. This mistake ensured that England to this day has still never beaten America at a World Cup. Speaking of England, the national team has over the years built quite a reputation as, ignore that, serial chokers. In 1993, England were on the brink of missing the following year's World Cup in America. They needed the Dutch to slip up against Poland, and they themselves had to rack up as many goals as possible in their final qualifier. Fortunately, their opponent was San Marino, officially the lowest ranked team in the world. Scoring goals should never have been a problem.
San Marino kick-off. Remember that Holland is very ground. Oh, it's a mistake by Pearce and humiliation here.
For San Marino, Davide Gualtieri had just scored the fastest goal in World Cup history, whether in qualifying or the finals, timed at just 8.3 seconds. Although England recovered to win the match, the Netherlands also won, which meant England failed to qualify for the World Cup. In the end, San Marino walked away as the real winners. In hindsight, these are the oddities of football, the bloopers that live on in compilations but don't change history. But not all jokes are harmless curiosities. Tier 2 is where the stakes rise. These are the mistakes that actually tip the balance of a match. In the Coupe de la Ligue in 2004, Marseille finally looked ready to end their curse against PSG after taking a 2-0 lead. But in the second half, PSG scored twice to level, and in the final seconds, this happened. It was PSG's 8th straight victory over Marseille, a streak Parisians still call the Big 8. Fast forward to the Merseyside derby in 2018. With the game seemingly destined for a draw, Everton's Jordan Pickford tried to tip a looping shot over the crossbar. Instead, he palmed it back into play onto the head of Divock Origi. A single mistake, giving Liverpool a derby winner they had no right to claim. If Tier 1 was about missing goals, Tier 2 has the opposite problem, scoring them in the wrong net. Few things can turn a match on its head faster than a player putting the ball into their own net. Some own goals, though, are more spectacular than others. In the third round of the 2004-05 FA Cup, Liverpool's Jimmy Traore attempted a simple turn and dragged back inside his 6-yard box. His final touch nudged the ball past his own line. That single mistake decided the match. In 1991, with less than a minute on the clock and under no pressure whatsoever, Arsenal's Lee Dixon casually lofted the ball back toward David Seaman.
Decided to give me an early touch of the ball against Coventry. Unfortunately, it was nowhere near. It was one of the quickest own goals of all time.
35 yards is bad enough, but Christoph Kramer went even further. Fresh off winning the World Cup in 2014, the Borussia Mönchengladbach midfielder was still recovering from a concussion that left him with no memory of the final. In a match versus Borussia Dortmund, he produced a moment he would want wiped off his mind instead.
Oh dear! What a goal!
That was the only goal of the match, and the result ended Gladbach's club record 18-game unbeaten streak. Turns out, there are all kinds of own goals. There's the unintentional, the intentional, the unlucky, the pinball, the long range, the bicycle kick, the scorpion kick, the keeper who forgets how to use his legs, the keeper who uses his legs against himself, and then there's the classic throwing the ball into your own net. But do you know what's worse than all of that? How about 2 own goals in the same match. In 2013, Stoke City's Jonathan Walters endured a nightmare against Chelsea. He scored 2 own goals and missed a penalty for good measure. Fast forward to 2022, when Liverpool's forward couldn't find the net, Leicester's Wout Fast stepped up for Liverpool. His double own goal sealed Liverpool's comeback victory. And speaking of Liverpool, club legend Jamie Carragher sits second on the all-time Premier League own goal list. 2 of those came in a single game against Manchester United on the date of September 11. But do you know what's worse than 2? How about 3? In a 1971 UEFA Cup tie at Molineux, Dutch side FC Den Haag managed 3 own goals in a 4-0 defeat to Wolves. Somehow, Sunderland topped that in 2003 against Charlton Athletic. 3 own goals in just 7 minutes. At least in both those cases, the embarrassments were spread across multiple players. The same can be said for New Zealand's Michaela Moore, who achieved the rarest feat of them all, a perfect hat-trick of own goals. Right foot, header, left foot. This begs the question, has anyone ever scored more than 3 own goals in a single match? The answer is yes. Turns out, almost anything in sports can happen, and very little can ever be ruled out. One of the cruelest truths in sports is that momentum can flip in an instant. A team can look untouchable one moment only to unravel the next. History is filled with examples of teams who thought their lead was untouchable until it wasn't.
This lead here, it's dealt with. Incredible! Astonishing!
In Germany, Borussia Dortmund have made a habit of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. In a match in 2022, they led newly promoted Werder Bremen 2-0 for 88 minutes. Can you guess what happens after that?
Oh, yes, they will! Unbelievable scenes here. Oliver Burke, who got a last-minute goal.
In Italy in 2023, Frosinone led Cagliari 3-0 with just 20 minutes to go. Even after conceding twice, they looked safe until Leonardo Pavoletti scored in the 94th and again in the 96th minute to complete a 4-3 miracle. In France's Ligue 1 during the 1998-99 season, Montpellier produced one of the most spectacular collapses in the league's history, throwing away a 4-0 lead against Marseille to lose 5-4. The 2015 Gold Cup gave us something truly absurd, a triple choke. Mexico went 2-0 up against Trinidad and Tobago, only for Trinidad to score 3 unanswered goals. Then they choked, conceding in the 88th minute and again via a disastrous own goal in stoppage time. Just when it seemed over, Mexico choked too, as Johannes Marshall scored a dramatic equalizer in the dying seconds. Over in Copa America, the biggest blown lead came in 1993, when the United States squandered a 3-0 advantage against Venezuela. In Euro 2000, Slovenia led Yugoslavia 3-0, only to see their opponents storm back with 3 goals in 6 minutes. The opening match of the 2010 Africa Cup of Nations saw the hosts Angola go 4-0 up against Mali. With just over 10 minutes to go, they somehow allowed 4 goals in the closing stages. At the 1966 World Cup, North Korea stunned the world by racing to a 3-0 lead over Portugal in the first half. But then, Eusebio single-handedly turned the match around, scoring 4 goals and inspiring a 5-3 comeback. But for pure chaos, nothing tops the 1954 quarterfinal between Austria and Switzerland, remembered as the heat battle of Lausanne, because it was played in the scorching 40 degrees Celsius. The Swiss captain Roger Bouquet played despite having a brain tumor. Meanwhile, Austria's goalkeeper Kurt Schmid suffered from heat stroke early on, forcing the team's masseur to literally tell him which way to dive. Switzerland scored in the 16th, 17th and 19th minutes to go 3-0 up. They scored another one just 6 minutes before the break. But would you believe me when I say that between Switzerland's 3rd and 4th goal, the Austrians had responded with 5 goals. Theodor Wagner began the response in the 25th minute. Alfred Kerner made it 2-3 a minute later. And another minute after that, Wagner equalized. 3 Austrian goals in 3 minutes and 6 total goals between the 16th and 27th minutes. The Austrians scored 2 more and even missed a penalty. By halftime, Austria led 5-4 7-4, still the highest scoring half in World Cup history. They eventually won 7-5 in one of football's most absurdly entertaining matches ever played. At the end of the day, these collapses might look catastrophic in isolation, but history has a way of forgiving them. In truth, most barely left a mark. They didn't linger in collective memory. Instead, they survived as statistical carnage, fun facts for those who read match reports like bedtime stories. But beyond this tier, the tone shifts. Football has always sold the illusion that talent, preparation, and pedigree will always prevail. But football isn't played on paper, and sometimes the better team loses. It's not choking away a lead or committing a single costly mistake, but losing at the hands of those who were never meant to stand a chance is just as painful. You probably remember England versus Iceland at Euro 2016. On paper, it shouldn't have even been close. England, a country with one of the richest footballing histories, home to the Premier League, billion-pound stadiums, and players who train with data analysts and personal chefs. And then there's Iceland. Their manager at the time worked part-time as a dentist. England had over 53 million people to choose from. Iceland had around 330,000, about the same as Coventry or Leicester's population. What followed was one of the most humiliating defeats in football history. It was one of the darkest days in English football, a result so shocking it was dubbed a second exit from Europe, coming just days after the Brexit vote. However, this is arguably not as bad as what happened in 1950. As I said in Tier 1, football has never been soccer at the World Cup. Let's revisit one of those encounters. In 1950, England were making their World Cup debut. They arrived in Brazil as self-proclaimed kings of football, armed with a post-war record of 23 wins, 4 losses, and 3 draws. They had demolished Italy 4-0, obliterated Portugal 10-0 in Lisbon just 2 weeks prior, and even a combined Great Britain 11 had humbled the rest of Europe 6-1. England were so stacked with talent, they didn't even bring in Stanley Matthews at first, 35 years old and still one of the best players on the planet. Meanwhile, the United States assembled what could generously be called a team. These were semi-professionals and men with day jobs. Walter Barr was a high school teacher. Frank Berge drove a hearse for his uncle's funeral home. Others were letter carriers and dishwashers. One player even withdrew because he couldn't get time off work. Their coach, William Jeffrey, was hired 2 weeks before the tournament, and the team's only full training session came the day before they flew to Brazil. 3 of their players weren't even US citizens. On paper, it was the atomic bomb versus a coughing baby. The British press didn't even consider the idea of defeat, only by how many they'd win. 5-0? 10-0? Surely this was a light jog in the park. The best team in the world had just lost to a squad that literally washed dishes for a living. This was bad enough, but believe it or not, it wasn't even the biggest shock of that World Cup. Despite their miracle in 1950, the United States vanished from the World Cup stage for 40 years. When they finally returned in 1990, they have appeared in every tournament since. Well, almost every tournament. Fast forward to 2018. The US entered the final day of World Cup qualifying, needing just a draw against Trinidad and Tobago, a team that had won only once the entire campaign. All the US had to do was not lose. That's it. Just don't lose. I don't need to tell you what happened next.
Towards the penalty spot, tips up and in, and Winchester. There's a long distance blast, and it's Alvin Jones.
blows the whistle. It's done! It's over! Trinidad, with nothing to play for, has dethroned the United States.
Just like England in 1950, it was a national humiliation. Elimination in the final round is always heartbreaking, but losing to a far inferior opponent makes it sting so much more. China, a nation of over 1 billion people, has never exactly been a football powerhouse. Back in 1985, in the final match day of the first round of World Cup qualifying, they found themselves in a simple position: just avoid defeat against Hong Kong and they would advance. But just like the US decades later, they fell to a shocking 2-1 loss. The match became known as the 19 May incident, a result so humiliating that it sparked the first recorded act of football hooliganism in the history of the People's Republic of China. In the World Cup itself, there's a strange curse. It seems that once you climb football's highest peak, the fall comes swiftly after. 6 different times, the defending champions have crashed out in the group stage of the next tournament. But this curse has been particularly unforgiving in the 21st century. In 2002, reigning champions France, with Zidane and Henry at their peak, lost 1-0 to debutants Senegal in the opening match. By the end of the group stage, France had scored 0 goals. In 2010, Italy's title defense was no better. They stumbled to 1-1 draws against Paraguay and New Zealand before collapsing 3-2 to Slovakia, and they finished last in their group. To this day, that 2006 final remains Italy's last appearance in a World Cup knockout match. In 2014, Spain arrived in Brazil with 3 consecutive major trophies under their belt. Their opening match was a rematch of the 2010 final against the Netherlands, and they lost 5-1. Shell-shocked, they were defeated 2-0 in their next game against Chile. The defending champions were out before their final group game. By 2018, Germany knew the pattern and they were determined to break it. Their title defense began with a 1-0 defeat to Mexico. They scraped past Sweden thanks to a late free kick and just needed a 1-goal win over South Korea to advance. Instead, 2 late South Korean goals sealed Germany's fate and made it 3 consecutive World Cups where the defending champion failed to survive the group stage. But not all upsets are bad. Sometimes they're the start of something legendary. West Germany lost to East Germany in 1974 and went on to lift the World Cup. Spain lost to Switzerland in their opening game in 2010 and went on to lift the World Cup. And in 2022, Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia in one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. And well, you know how that one ends. Sometimes a stumble is just the start of the sprint. That was the case for Portugal in Euro 2004. They were the hosts, the golden generation, and the heavy favorites. Their first opponent was Greece, a team with pre-tournament odds of 150-1 and a record of never having won a match at a major event. And Portugal lost. Fortunately, they regrouped and reached the final. This was the chance for them to claim their first ever major international trophy, and the opponent was Greece again. It was destiny, the perfect chance for redemption, this time for glory on home soil. The script was written for a Portuguese coronation, but football doesn't always follow the script.
Η Ελλάδα είναι πρωταθλήτρια Ευρώπης!
2004 was a strange year for football. Greece won the Euros. Arsenal went unbeaten for an entire Premier League season, the first and only team to do so. And perhaps the strangest of them all, San Marino recorded their first ever win. The Champions League that year was no less chaotic. In the round of 16, Porto came up against Manchester United. And I'm not talking about this Manchester United, I mean this Manchester United, a true European powerhouse. For Porto, knocking them out of the Champions League was unthinkable. But Porto somehow came back to win 2-1 in the first leg. In the second leg at Old Trafford, a first half header from Paul Scholes looked to have sealed it for United. Porto were seconds away from elimination. And then this happened.
It's McCarthy. It's a good save by Howard. It's been turned in by Costinha.
In the quarterfinals, Real Madrid and AC Milan were the reigning European champions. Their opponents were Monaco and Deportivo La Coruña respectively. And after the first legs, everyone thought these ties were over. But then came the second legs. In Monaco, Madrid took the lead through Raúl, seemingly killing the tie, until Ludovic Giuli's volley before halftime reignited belief. Then, Fernando Morientes, on loan from Madrid, headed Monaco's second. Giuli flicked in another, sealing a 3-1 win and progression on away goals. Meanwhile, in La Coruña, Milan's 3-goal cushion vanished before halftime. By the hour mark, they had completed the impossible. The reigning champions were humiliated, and the Riyadh crowd witnessed one of the greatest turnarounds in Champions League history. That year, Porto and Monaco reached the Champions League final. Nowadays, both clubs would count themselves lucky just to reach the knockout rounds. But in 2004, Porto went all the way. Domestic football, however, had its own brand of madness. In Spain, there's the Alcoconazo, where third-tier minnows Alcocon obliterated Real Madrid 4-0 in the Copa del Rey. In the FA Cup, every year at least one giant falls to a lower-ranked team. In 2017, 5th-tier Lincoln City stunned Premier League club Burnley. In 2013, Luton Town, then a non-league club, beat Norwich City away. And back in 1989, Sutton United, playing in the conference, toppled Coventry City, FA Cup winners just 2 years prior. But sometimes, the ultimate giant killing doesn't happen in the early rounds, but under the bright lights of Wembley itself. 2013 was supposed to be Manchester City's year. They had one of the richest squads in the world and were heavy favorites to crush relegation threatened Wigan Athletic in the final. But as football loves to remind us, money is no guarantee of triumph.
Maloney takes. It's Ben Watson for Wigan Athletic. Wigan have done it.
Wigan had just pulled off what many called the biggest FA Cup final shock since Wimbledon stunned Liverpool in 1988. Just 3 days later, Wigan were relegated. There's a unique agony in public embarrassment, especially when you're expected to win only to be unexpectedly defeated by an underestimated opponent. This kind of humiliation allows for widespread blame. You can point fingers in every direction: the goalkeeper, the manager, the tactics, or the weather. Everyone shares the shame. But what happens when you cannot share it, when there's no one else to blame? A campaign's fate can sometimes hinge on a single error rather than a collective team failure. It's an indelible mistake that haunts forever, like having the chance to save your team and failing.
Gliding through, pulling it back. Oh, he's missed it! I cannot believe it! How on earth has Sterling missed that?
The 2010 World Cup quarter-final featured arguably the most infamous penalty miss in football history. Ghana, having become only the third African team to reach this stage, stood on the cusp of becoming the first to qualify for the semi-finals, with Uruguay as their opponents. The score was 1-1, and in the dying moments of extra time, a scramble in the penalty area saw Luis Suarez deliberately block a goal-bound shot with his hands. He was red-carded, and Ghana was awarded a penalty, a chance to make history on their home continent with the final kick of the game. The immense responsibility fell to Asamoah Gyan, who had been instrumental in their journey, scoring 3 crucial goals, 2 of which were penalties. All he needed to do was convert another. However, on that fateful day, something shifted. Perhaps it was the overwhelming pressure, or perhaps the Jabulani ball played a part. We'd already seen 2 improbable goals earlier in that match. But either way, the normally reliable Gyan in that singular moment was not the player he had been throughout the tournament.
And he hits the bar! Unbelievable!
Ghana ultimately lost the ensuing penalty shootout, and that miss would forever haunt Gyan. And as for Suarez, you could say he single-handedly crushed Africa's dream, or rather, double-handedly. A single missed kick can invalidate a team's entire campaign, just as a goalkeeping error can be equally, if not more, devastating. When you hear the name René Higuita, most people think of the iconic scorpion kick against England. Some remember his free kick goals. Others simply call him El Loco, the madman. But there's another reason that nickname stuck. In the 1990 World Cup round of 16, Higuita attempted to dribble past Cameroon's Roger Milla. He failed, Milla stole the ball, scored, and Colombia were eliminated. Fast forward to the 2011 League Cup final, where heavy favorites Arsenal faced relegation-threatened Birmingham City. In the dying minutes, a defensive mix-up between Szczesny and Koscielny gifted Obafemi Martins a simple tap-in. The defeat was particularly bitter for Arsenal, as Birmingham, like Wigan in 2013, were relegated that same season. And in the 2023 AFCON, the most entertaining tournament in the world, we witnessed one of the most bizarre fumbles in recent memory. In the final match day of Group B, Ghana needed a win to progress. By the 90th minute, they were 2-0 up. Into stoppage time, Mozambique pulled one back through a penalty, but there seemed to be too little time left. They threw everything forward until one final effort drifted wide. And then something strange happened. Ghana's goalkeeper and captain Richard Ofori decided to stop the ball from going out of play. But his touch was clumsy and he failed to hold onto it. Little did he know that single decision would trigger one of the wildest chain of reactions in football history.
Decent one to the back post. There's a goal! Reinildo scores!
Ghana finished third in Group B, and they were below the hosts Ivory Coast in the ranking of third-placed teams. Without Ofori's fateful touch, Egypt would have finished third instead, but they would have been above Ivory Coast in the ranking of third-placed teams. As we all know, Ivory Coast went on to win the entire tournament. That's the butterfly effect. The champions of Africa, born from one goalkeeper's mishap. But if you want to talk about costly goalkeeper errors, look no further than the 2017-18 Champions League. In the semi-final against Real Madrid, Bayern's hopes were dashed by a single back pass gone wrong. Keeper Sven Ulreich slipped while trying to control the ball, allowing Karim Benzema to pounce and score. Bayern lost 4-3 on aggregate, sending Real Madrid to the final against Liverpool, whose own keeper was about to write his name into goalkeeping infamy. Loris Karius' time at Liverpool was defined by inconsistency. Throughout the campaign, his performances were marred by errors, yet Liverpool still fought their way to the Champions League final, and Jurgen Klopp kept his faith in Karius. What followed in Kiev was 90 minutes of pure torment.
Zimari got the option to Marcelo. Oh, and then Karius, oh, it's got in! Oh my word!
But he's just fatigued a little bit, and Chan's got to bring some new energy. Oh,
There's a shot, oh, he shot it! Two goalkeeping errors tonight by Karius have cost Liverpool so dear in the Champions League final.
Days later, medical examinations revealed that Karius had suffered a concussion caused by Sergio Ramos' elbow earlier in the match. It's possible that the blow clouded his decision-making that night, but the damage was done. Liverpool lost the final, Karius was bombarded with death threats, and he would never play for the club again. Nowadays, that final is all he's known for. It's unfair how a single lapse can derail an entire campaign. It's even worse when that lapse comes from your best player. At the 1984 European Championships final, Spain's goalkeeper Luis Arconada appeared to have safely smothered a free kick only for the ball to slip agonizingly under his body and roll into the net. That blunder gave France the opening goal in a 2-0 defeat. Despite being regarded as one of Europe's best goalkeepers, years later, Spaniards still called this Arconada's goal. In the 2002 World Cup, Oliver Kahn was Germany's titan. He won both the Lev Yashin Award for Best Goalkeeper and the Golden Ball for Best Player of the tournament. Still the only keeper in history to do so. Yet, what people also remember is one fatal moment.
Now Rivaldo, Owen Kong spilled it, Ronaldo to make the breakthrough.
Brazil won the match and Khan stood alone in his goal mouth as Brazil lifted the trophy. And then there's Roberto Baggio at the 1994 World Cup. After a sluggish start, he almost single-handedly carried Italy to the final, earning the silver ball and a place in the All-Star team. But in the penalty shootout with the world watching, he sent the decisive kick over the bar, handing Brazil the title. Baggio reportedly stood by the goal for 8 long minutes. From that day, he became known as the man who died standing. But sometimes, a missed penalty can be pure satisfaction. In the 2013 Championship playoff semi-final between Watford and Leicester City, the aggregate scores were level deep into stoppage time when Anthony Knockaert appeared to dive to win a penalty for Leicester, and he decided to take it himself.
Knockout takes, Almunia saves, Knockout follows in, Almunia saves again!
Almunia saved not once but twice, and Watford launched a lightning counter-attack that ended with Troy Deeney smashing the ball into the net, sending Vicarage Road into absolute chaos. It remains to this day the greatest punishment for a dive in football history. But have you ever seen a counter-attack so punishing it practically exiled a player from his own country? World Cup 1994 Qualification. France began the campaign with a 2-0 loss to Bulgaria, but rebounded with a 7-match unbeaten run. They were in pole position with 2 home matches remaining. But against Israel, France choked, losing 3-2 after conceding 2 late goals to a team that had won 0 matches before that night. That meant their final game was do or die. A draw against Bulgaria would be enough to qualify. France took the lead through Eric Cantona, only for Emil Kostadinov to equalize minutes later. The French settled for a defensive setup, sitting deep and holding on as the clock wound down. Then, in the dying seconds, France earned a free kick near the corner flag. Time was almost up. The ball was at French Player of the Year David Ginola's feet, and all he had to do was shield the ball, waste a few seconds, and France would be through. But instead, he decided to swing a cross in. Let's just say his international career was never the same again.
Le centré, c'est Kremenliev qui va récupérer ce ballon.
On est dans les 10 secondes de la fin du temps réglementaire.
Penef loin devant. Attention. Attention Kostadinov.
Oh, à 10 secondes. C'est la fin.
After the match, manager Gerard Houllier placed the entire blame on Ginola, describing him as the man who had sent an Exocet missile through the heart of French football. The country turned on him overnight, and Ginola soon moved to England, signing with Newcastle, a club that would later experience its own significant choke. The beauty of the choke often stems from a complex interplay of factors. Most of the time, it's the crushing burn of immense pressure, causing even the most seasoned athletes to falter. But rarely, there are those instances where the choke is born from something so fundamentally simple, yet devastatingly impactful. The slip. In the high-stakes world of football, where every movement is scrutinized, a literal misstep can possess the power to unravel years of arduous effort. Take the 2008 UEFA Champions League final. After a grueling deadlock, the match between Manchester United and Chelsea went to penalties. John Terry, Chelsea's captain, stepped up to take what could have been the most important kick of his life, convert it, and Chelsea would be champions of Europe at last. But fate had other plans, and they began long before Terry even approached the ball. In the days leading up to the final, UEFA officials had expressed concerns about the pitch at Moscow's Luzhniki Stadium. The grass had been hastily relaid just 15 days before the match and had not settled properly. People were warned that the surface might not hold. A second pitch had even been installed after the first one was deemed unfit. During the match itself, himself, Ashley Cole even had to change his boots early on. Still, no one truly believed the pitch would decide the final. Before kickoff, Terry dismissed the issue. The pitch is the same for both sides. If we get the footwear right, we'll be fine. We're not worrying about that at all.
To give them the trophy. Oh, he's missed it! He's missed it!
Chelsea ultimately lost the shootout, and Terry was inconsolable. That slip cost Chelsea the Champions League. 6 years later, another captain would experience a heartbreak just as haunting.
Oh, that's not on the telly.
One that would affect an entire title race. In April 2014, Liverpool were on the cusp of their first ever league title in 25 years. With just 3 games left, they sat 5 points clear of second place Chelsea, though Man City still had games in hand. Still, a draw against Chelsea would have kept Liverpool firmly in control. And as halftime approached, Liverpool looked comfortable. Deep in his own half, Captain Steven Gerrard received a simple pass, the kind of pass every footballer makes 1,000 times without thinking. But the universe had a cruel joke in store, one that was practically written weeks earlier. After Liverpool's emotional win over Manchester City, Gerrard had gathered his teammates and shouted, "Slip." What an unfortunate word choice. You couldn't make this stuff up.
Oh, and Gerrard slipped, and Demba Ba's in here. Out comes Mignolet, but Bar punishes of all people Steven Gerrard. It's a terrific moment for Chelsea, but an awful one for the Liverpool skipper.
This was, without question, the defining moment of Liverpool's season. Chelsea would go on to score another one to win 2-0. But here's something you need to understand about these kinds of moments. Individual mistakes can swing a game, but over the course of an entire campaign, no single pass or slip or goal is solely responsible for the outcome. It isn't fair to place all of the blame on one player making one mistake. But moments like these can become the spark that triggers a team-wide collapse. And sometimes that's all it takes for a dream season to begin unraveling. That loss left Liverpool just 3 points ahead of Manchester City, who still had a game in hand. City would go on to win that match, which meant Liverpool's fate no longer rested entirely in their hands. With an inferior goal difference, they needed not just victories, but a lot of goals. So, in their penultimate game against Crystal Palace, Liverpool stormed to a 3-0 lead. But 3 wasn't enough. They needed more. So they kept attacking, throwing everything forward. And, well, you know what happens next.
Murray, chance here, Dale, 3-3! Whose captain is down, virtually on his knees, on the centre line.
With that, the collapse was complete. They were 5 points clear at one point, and now they were back at 0. Liverpool's collapse was brutal, but at least theirs was confined to a single league campaign. For some teams, choking is a reputation. For the losing sides, penalty shootouts are one of football's most agonizing climaxes. And over the years, some teams have become defined by their failures from the spot, as if cursed by the footballing gods themselves. For the Dutch, since Euro 1992, they have endured a rather dreadful stretch, losing 7 of the 9 shootouts they have participated in. A particularly egregious example occurred in the Euro 2000 semi-final against Italy, where they missed not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 penalties, 2 during regular time that could have spared them the ordeal, and 3 more in the shootout itself. And then there's everyone's favorite laughingstock. For the better part of 3 decades, they've become infamously noted for their consistent inability to succeed in penalty shootouts. It began in 1990 when Chris Waddle launched his penalty into orbit against West Germany. 6 years later, another semi-final, another loss, and yes, against Germany again.
Thank you, miss. Come on, Gareth, it only took me 6 years to get over it. Have some pan pizza.
Then came 1998, Argentina, 2004. Portugal 2006, Portugal again 2012, Italy 2020, Italy again, and guess who was the manager? And in 2022, they didn't even need a shootout to lose on penalties. But fortunately for them, choking isn't exclusive to the Three Lions. The UEFA Champions League stands as the pinnacle of club football, and the desire to lift the coveted trophy incentivizes many clubs to splash as much cash as possible. Man City and PSG are the two clubs that come to mind. They were both acquired by wealthy entities. They have consistently received substantial financial backing, and they have achieved everything possible domestically. Yet, on the biggest stage for a significant period before they broke their duck, PSG and Manchester City were serial chokers. For Man City, it began in 2017. In the round of 16, they were drawn against AS Monaco, and at the Etihad, City won 5-3. It was a statement performance. Yet, in the return leg, all that confidence evaporated. City found themselves 2-0 down, clawed back into the tie through Leroy Sané, only to concede late to Tiemwe Bakayoko. And just like that, they were out on away goals. 5 years later, City faced Real Madrid in the semi-finals. A thrilling 4-3 win at the Etihad gave them a slender advantage heading into the Bernabeu. When Riyad Mahrez struck in the 75th minute of the second leg, it looked like the job was done. City were minutes away from another final, and then they conceded 2 goals in 2 minutes, and then they conceded a penalty, and then Karim Benzema scored 3-1 on the night, 6-5 on aggregate. Another City choke. For PSG, it began in 2013. They had one foot in the semi-finals after a 3-1 win over Chelsea in Paris, only to crumble in London, losing 2-0 and going out on away goals. Fast forward to 2019, a battered and depleted Manchester United came to town, and PSG already had a 2-0 advantage from Old Trafford, the first French team ever to win there in Europe. All they had to do was hold steady.
For the quarterfinals, and there's a back ball. Here's the chance. It's Lukaku, and he's around the goalkeeper, and he's squeezed it in. And what a start that is! By Shaw, he's got himself. Still by Buffon. Oh, they've got another one, and it's him again, Romelu Lukaku. Dalot's thinking about the shot. That took a deflection. It's a corner. Penalty. It's a penalty to Manchester United. Oh, he smashed it in. What a penalty from Marcus Rashford!
They crashed out on away goals yet again. This made PSG the first team ever to be eliminated from a knockout tie after winning the first leg away by 2 goals. And in 2021, it was Real Madrid. PSG led the tie comfortably, 2 goals up with less than half an hour to play. But then they panicked again. 3 goals conceded in just 17 minutes, and that's another European dream in ruins. But by far, the most iconic PSG choke came in 2017. Paris Saint-Germain versus Barcelona. It was their 3rd meeting in the Champions League knockouts, and in both previous encounters, Barcelona had come out on top. But this time, PSG weren't messing around. Angel Di Maria opened the scoring with a curling free kick. Julian Draxler made it 2 with a low strike. After the break, Di Maria struck again from range, and Edison Cavani sealed it with a 4th. A 4-0 demolition. Not to mention, Barcelona had managed just 1 shot on target all game. Heading into the second leg, Barcelona faced a virtually insurmountable challenge, overcoming a 4-goal deficit, a feat unprecedented in the history of the competition. PSG had done it. They had finally defeated their tormentors. There was simply no way they could mess this up now. Just 3 minutes into the second leg, they conceded. Just before halftime, they conceded again, and by the 50th minute, it was 3-0. Nerves began to creep in again. But then came a lifeline. Cavani scored a precious away goal in the 62nd minute, meaning Barcelona now needed 3 more. PSG had done enough. The score stayed the same until the 88th minute. And then Barcelona won a free kick.
Now what's Neymar got up his sleeve here? Oh, he's got something really special up his sleeve. Great goal. Neymar for Barcelona. 4-1 on the night. 4-5 on aggregate. Neymar makes the run. It's forward towards Suarez. Down he goes inside the penalty area. It is a penalty kick, I think, for Barcelona. Neymar against Trapp. He scored! 2 quick goals for Neymar. It's 5-1 Barcelona. 5-5 on aggregate. Oh, what a grandstand finish to this game. Away off the head of Adrien Rabiot. Intense pressure now on the Paris Saint-Germain defence. It's Neymar trying to feed it through. It's a stretch and it's in. And I can't remember the last time I saw something like this. Extraordinary scenes at the Nou Camp. Sergio Roberto, the substitute, is the hero of the hour, and it is the greatest Champions League knockout comeback of all time.
In an astonishing collapse, Paris Saint-Germain conceded 3 goals in just 7 minutes. They squandered a 4-0 aggregate lead to lose 6-5. This choke is monumental, and it is widely regarded as the biggest in Champions League history. Paris Saint-Germain's collapse was called a humiliation. So, the season after the nightmare, they decided to acquire Neymar, the very man who orchestrated their downfall. Ironically, that move seemed to transfer the curse over to Barcelona themselves. In their first season without Neymar, Barcelona faced Roma in the quarterfinals, carrying a comfortable 4-1 lead from the first leg. Historically, a 3-goal or greater deficit reversal was rare, having only been achieved twice before, a feat Barcelona themselves had accomplished the previous season. But it took Roma just 6 minutes to spark hope through Edin Dzeko's close finish. Daniel De Rossi then converted from the spot, and with just 8 minutes left, Kostas Manolas delivered the killer blow. Barcelona had been given a taste of their own medicine. A year later, it happened again. Barcelona arrived at Anfield for the semi-final second leg with a 3-0 advantage. All they had to do was stay composed. Instead, Liverpool's intensity consumed them. Divock Origi scored early, Jorginho Wijnaldum came on and struck twice in 3 minutes, and then
Liverpool 3-0. Corner taken quickly, Origi! Unbelievable! Divock Origi! Oh my word!
2 massive chokes in 2 successive seasons. While these moments of implosion happens on the grandest European stage, sometimes choking doesn't take place in a single night. Sometimes it unfolds slowly, agonizingly over the course of a season. Before the 2024-25 season, Ajax were in the absolute gutter. The club had just endured their worst domestic campaign in quite a while. So in the summer, a rebuild began. Under new Italian coach Francesco Farioli, Ajax unexpectedly found themselves in a title race. Against all odds, they stood on the brink of a 37th Eredivisie crown. They even defeated defending champions PSV Eindhoven to establish a 9-point cushion at the top. With just 5 games left, the title was entirely in their hands. All they had to do was close it out. Their next match was against FC Utrecht, and they lost 4-0. No problems, still 6 points clear. Next came Sparta Rotterdam, and they were lucky to escape with a point, but the cushion was down to 4. Then came NEC, and okay, now it was serious. In just 3 games, the 9-point lead had shrunk to just 1. Next up was FC Groningen, a mid-table side with nothing to play for. This was a match that Ajax needed to win, and a 68th minute goal from Wout Weghorst looked to have sealed it. Ajax clung to that lead desperately, doing everything to run down the clock. Deep into stoppage time, 90 plus 9 minutes on the clock, Groningen had one last chance, one last free kick. They threw everyone forward. It all came down to this moment.
Seuntjes met de vrije schop, aangesneden, aangeraakt en binnengetikt. Ja, daar gaat hij nog. Daar wordt het nog 2-2. En een totale ontploffing van de Euroborg.
For PSV fans, the news sparked wild celebrations. They knew the title was theirs. Ajax won their final game, but so did PSV, sealing what would go down as the worst title collapse in Eredivisie history. A similar fate befell Real Madrid in the 2003-04 season, only this time the fall was even more astronomical. The Galacticos era under Florentino Perez was in full swing. Having won the previous season, Madrid strengthened their already absurdly stacked lineup by adding David Beckham to a dressing room that already featured Ronaldo, Zidane, Figo, and Roberto Carlos. It was a team built to dominate everything, and for a while they did. By the end of February, Los Blancos sat 8 points clear at the top of La Liga with 12 matches remaining. Everything pointed to another inevitable title, but then it all came crashing down. First, they unexpectedly lost the Copa del Rey final to Real Zaragoza. Then came that Champions League defeat to Monaco. From that moment on, Madrid completely unraveled. They lost all 5 of their final league matches, tumbling from first place to a miserable 4th. However, there was a fall even more colossal than that, and it belonged to Botafogo. In 2023, Botafogo were expected at best to fight for a top 6 finish. However, they shocked everyone by taking the lead after just 3 rounds. By the halfway point of the season, they were 13 points clear at the top, on course for one of the greatest first halves in Brazilian football history, perhaps even the greatest season in the club's history. But then, in June, head coach Luis Castro accepted an offer from Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia. His replacement lasted barely 3 months before being dismissed, and with the managerial seats still warm, Botafogo's leadership decided to promote 2 fan favorites. But the constant changes and the loss of leadership proved catastrophic. Listen to this. The team only won a jaw-dropping 2 matches out of their last 17 fixtures. What even is that? Granted, they were never favorites to win the title, but what they produced in the second half of the season was relegation form. Botafogo obviously lost the title and they collapsed all the way to 5th place. This is possibly the worst choke of all time, but in my opinion, the most entertaining choke and the one that instantly comes to everyone's mind when the word choke comes up has to be in the 1995-96 season, Newcastle significantly bolstered their squad. The club acquired talents such as Les Ferdinand, Warren Barton, Shaka Hislop, and David Ginola, which led to an explosive start for Kevin Keegan's team. From August until mid-March, Newcastle led the table almost wire to wire. By Christmas, they were 10 points clear of Manchester United. Even after a 2-0 defeat at Old Trafford, their advantage grew to 12 points by late January. The arrival of Faustino Asprilla and David Batty further bolstered the squad, and with 15 games remaining and a double-digit lead, the title seemed theirs for the taking. But fun fact, no. Cracks began to appear as Manchester United, invigorated by Eric Cantona's return, found their form, while Newcastle started to run out of gas. From late February to early April, Newcastle lost 5 of their 8 matches. The lead shrank 1 match at a time, and a home defeat to United at St. James Park cut the gap to a single point. This collapse continued with losses to Arsenal, Liverpool in an absolute classic, and Blackburn Rovers allowing Manchester United to take the lead. Despite a brief recovery with 3-1-0 victories, Ferguson's mind games intensified the title race, leading to this infamous Kevin Keegan's on-air outburst.
And when you do things like that about a man like Stuart Pearce, I've kept really quiet, but I'll tell you something, he went down in my estimation when he said that. We have not resorted to that, but I'll tell you, you can tell him now, be watching it, we're still fighting for this title, and he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
That didn't seem to help because by the end of the season, they weren't even close. Newcastle's late season collapse was undoubtedly a tragedy, but it's not entirely unprecedented. In such a long season, teams frequently falter under pressure, succumbing to fatigue, injuries, or a crucial loss of form at the worst possible moment. Yet, occasionally, the beautiful game delivers something so illogical and seemingly impossible that it defies all reason. (1998-99). The Champions League had expanded to 24 teams just 2 years prior, and it was thanks to this that Manchester United were even in the final. They had already met Bayern Munich in the group stage, drawing both matches, but they finished behind Bayern and only went through as one of the two best runners-up. Both sides had fought their way back to this stage, both were domestic champions, and both stood one win away from a historic treble, a feat never before accomplished in their countries. But United were at a disadvantage. Captain Roy Keane and midfield engine Paul Scholes were both suspended. The press tried to stay optimistic, but everyone knew their absence was enormous. And right from the start, Manchester United's midfield was struggling to protect the defense, letting even Marcus Babbel, a defender, waltz right past them. 6 minutes in, Basler hit a low free kick around United's wall that caught Schmeichel off guard and put Bayern ahead. Even though United got more of the ball after that, Bayern's defense was rock solid. Plus, Bayern's counter-attack looked more threatening than United just holding onto the ball, as United couldn't create any real chances in the first half. The second half witnessed an even more relentless German team that dominated the game. They hit the post, they hit the bar, they forced Schmeichel into critical saves. United, on the other hand, just couldn't seem to get their shots on target, or Khan was there to stop them. It felt like United were just barely holding on. As the match crept into injury time, a premature wave of triumph had already washed over the Bayern Munich faithful. Red flares lit up the Barcelona night, and UEFA President Lennart Johansson began his descent to the pitch, ready to present a trophy already dressed in Bayern's colors. They had been the better side. They were dominant, they were disciplined, and they were in control from start to finish. Ottmar Hitzfeld's men had one hand on history.
In towards Schmeichel. It's comfort to Ayor. Cleared. Giggs with a shot. Sheringham! Name on the trophy. Into Sheringham, and Solskjaer has won it!
In just 102 seconds, Europe's most disciplined, composed, and ruthless team were reduced to disbelief. When play resumed, many Bayern players were too shattered to carry on, some needing Pierluigi Collina's urging just to get back on their feet. They had lost the game, they had already begun to celebrate. United held on until the final whistle. Kufor pounded the turf in tears. Janker sank to his knees in anguish, and on the bench, bench sat Lothar Matthäus, who had lived this heartbreak once before in 1987, now forced to relive the same cruel ending all over again. The 1999 final was proof that in football, dominance means nothing until the whistle blows. Yet, it wasn't the first time a team learned that lesson the hardest way possible. In the early 1950s, Hungary's golden team stood head and shoulders above the rest of the footballing world. Statistically, they remained the highest rated national side in history according to the ELO rankings. The mighty Magyars were a footballing revolution. They pioneered fluid positional play, a system built around a tight-knit core of players who trained and competed together regularly. Every player could seamlessly shift roles, laying the tactical foundation for what the world would later call total football. With innovation came dominance. Hungary entered the 1954 World Cup as overwhelming favorites, unbeaten in 31 matches over the previous 5 years. They were Olympic champions, Central European Cup winners, and they humiliated England twice. In Switzerland, they continued their rampage, scoring 25 goals in just 4 matches on their way to the final. It looked inevitable. The world was about to crown its greatest team, and the only obstacle left between Hungary and immortality was West Germany. After World War II, West Germany had played only a handful of friendlies and a brief qualifying campaign. Unlike the full-time Hungarian professionals, most of the German players were semi-professionals who balanced football with regular jobs or small businesses to make ends meet. In terms of talent and pedigree, the gulf between the two sides was enormous. It didn't help Germany's case that Hungary had already demolished them 8-3 in the group stage. But there were small, crucial details in Germany's favor. In that earlier match, coach Sepp Herberger had deliberately rested key players and experimented with others out of position, perhaps masking his side's true potential. And when the final arrived, the weather itself seemed to take Germany's side. The skies opened over Bern, soaking the pitch. Perfect Fritz Walter weather, as the captain was famously known to thrive in the rain. To top it off, Germans had a secret weapon, boots made by a then little-known company called Adidas, featuring revolutionary screw-in studs that helped the Germans stay on their feet. That didn't seem to matter because within 6 minutes, Ferenc Puskás fired Hungary into the lead, and just 2 minutes later, a defensive blunder handed them a second goal. It was business as usual for the mighty Magyars. This looked like it was going to be another routine demolition, but the Germans refused to fold. In the 10th minute, Helmut Rahn whipped in a low cross into the box and Max Morlock bundled it in from close range. Suddenly, it was 2-1. 8 minutes later, Rahn struck again, this time from a corner, leveling the match at 2-2. In just 10 minutes, the underdogs had clawed their way back. After the equalizer, Hungary finally began to play like the team everyone expected. They pressed relentlessly, carved open the German defense, and unleashed wave after wave of attacks. But nothing would go in. Shots rattled the crossbar, and when they didn't, Tony Turek was a one-man wall who refused to be beaten again. And as it always goes in football, when you waste your chances, you invite disaster. With 6 minutes left, disaster came. It's Rahn again. He picked up a loose clearance on the edge of the box, dropped his shoulder to one-foot the defender, and unleashed a low drive past Grosic. West Germany had turned the world upside down. When the final whistle blew, it didn't just end a football match, it ended the reign of Hungary's golden team. And the fallout was nothing short of seismic. The defeat sent shockwaves through Hungary, a nation that had built its pride around this team of invincibles. In Budapest, spontaneous demonstrations broke out, directed not only at the players, but also at the communist regime of Matthias Rákosi, which had shamelessly used the golden golden team's success as a political trophy. Manager Gustav Sebesh was publicly condemned for his tactics in team selections. The players, once national heroes, were stripped of privileges, even small allowances like bringing Western goods back home. Goalkeeper Jula Grosic, blamed by many for the decisive goal, was accused of espionage and treason, placed under house arrest and forcibly transferred. The defeat had effects that rippled far beyond football. Disillusionment with the regime's propaganda machine grew, and some historians believe that this resentment helped fuel the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, a revolution that ultimately ended the Golden Team. Many of Hungary's stars fled abroad, scattering the remains of one of football's greatest dynasties. From 1950 to their demise, the Golden Team played 69 matches, won 58, drew 10, and lost just once. But that one loss defined their legacy forever. 4 years before the miracle of Bern, it was Brazil's turn to stand on the edge of destiny. They were the hosts, the favorites, the team everyone expected to lift the trophy. They had dismantled opponents across South America, racking up scorelines so absurd they looked like typos. The 1950 World Cup was unlike any other. Instead of a knockout stage, it ended with a final round-robin group. Brazil breezed through the first phase and continued their rampage in the final group, hammering Sweden 7-1 and Spain 6-1. They sat comfortably at the top with 4 points, while Uruguay trailed close behind with 3, having clawed their way back to draw 2-2 with Spain and edge Sweden 3-2 thanks to a late winner. Going into the final match, Brazil needed only a draw to become world champions. Uruguay had to win. In the days leading up to the match, Brazil acted as though the result was already decided. Newspapers declared the Seleção champions in advance. The mayor of Rio even delivered a speech that sounded more like a coronation than motivation. A special victory song had been composed and rehearsed, ready to play the moment the final whistle blew. On the morning of the final, the official attendance stood at a staggering 173,850 paying spectators, still the largest crowd ever recorded for a football match. But with thousands sneaking in, the true number may have been closer to 220,000. Brazil had scored 21 goals in 5 matches, demolishing both of Uruguay's previous opponents by far greater margins. Confidence was overflowing. But as we've seen in this tournament, overconfidence has a habit of backfiring. The game began exactly as predicted. Brazil surged forward with the intent of repeating their demolition of Sweden and Spain, firing 30 shots toward goal. But every attack met a sky blue wall. Every Brazilian forward had a shadow. Captain Barella dropped deep to help Teixeira shackle Ademir, while goalkeeper Maspoli played the match of his life. Unlike Spain and Sweden before them, Uruguay refused to crack, and the first half ended scoreless. But early in the second half, Brazil finally broke through. Drawn to the left flank, Uruguay's defense left Friaça free on the right. Ademir slipped him the ball, Friaça drilled a low shot past Maspoli, and the Maracana literally exploded.
Pick yourself up, take a deep breath, dust yourself off and start all over again. Nothing's impossible, I have found, for when my chin is on the ground, I pick myself up, dust myself off, and start all over again. Don't lose your confidence if you slip. Be grateful for a pleasant trip and pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. Work like a soul inspired till the battle of the day is won. You may be sick and tired, but you'll be a man, my son. Will you remember the famous men who had to fall to rise again? So take a deep breath, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start
Terminou o jogo com a vitória do Uruguai. Uruguai, os campeões mundiais de futebol de 1950.
The final whistle blew and the Maracana fell silent. 200,000 voices reduced to nothing. This wasn't supposed to happen. For most Brazilians, football wasn't just a game, it was life. And this loss cut deeper than anything imaginable. Rumor has it, Brazil's coach Flavio Costa fled the stadium disguised as a nanny. Striker Ademir, when the whistle blew, got into his car and drove mile after mile until he reached an island off Rio's coast. He stayed there for 15 days, hiding from the crushing disappointment. The country needed someone to blame, and that burden fell on goalkeeper Moacir Barbosa. He would carry it for the rest of his life. In 1963, Barbosa was given the old square wooden goalposts from the Maracana. He brought them home, invited his neighbors for a barbecue, and then burned the posts to ashes. But the stigma never left him. In 2000, Barbosa said in an interview, "The maximum punishment in Brazil is 30 years imprisonment. But I have been paying for something I'm not even responsible for 50 years. There were darker stories of people dying from heart attacks or taking their own lives in its aftermath. True or not, they speak to the scale of the heartbreak. This was a national trauma." But while Brazil's collapse in 1950 was a tragedy and Hungary's in 1954 marked the death of a dynasty, if you're asking me about the greatest choke of all time, there's only one answer. AC Milan vs Liverpool, 2005. Champions League final. It was Liverpool's 6th appearance on the grandest stage and Milan's 10th. On paper, it appeared to be a mismatch. Milan's squad at the time was European royalty, boasting names like Maldini, Cafu, Nesta, Stam, Pirlo, Kaká, and Shevchenko. These were men specifically built for nights like these. Liverpool, by contrast, were the scrappy underdogs who had somehow stumbled their way to Istanbul, that barely escaped their group, needed a ghost goal to get past Chelsea, and finished outside the Premier League's top 4. Winning the Champions League was their only ticket back into the competition. Milan were chasing legacy. Liverpool were fighting for survival. On every metric, this wasn't supposed to be close. And it sure looked that way from the very start. Within 50 seconds, Paolo Maldini volleyed in a Pirlo free kick to make it 1-0. From there, Milan flowed forward with effortless grace. 39th minute, a counter led by Kaká sliced Liverpool open. He fed Shevchenko, who squared it for Crespo to slot home for 2-0. Just minutes later, Kaká produced a pass so perfect it should have come with a frame. Crespo ran onto it and delicately lifted it over Dudek. 3-0. By halftime, the game felt over. The gulf in class was staggering. It looks like Liverpool were going to get crushed. However, amidst this despair, a miracle was poised to unfold.
Charged down by Cafu.
You know, in football, victory is fleeting, but failure leaves a lasting mark. We remember the champions, yet we feel the chokers. They mirror our own vulnerability, reminding us that even the most dominant can falter under immense pressure. There's a peculiar beauty in the choke. Hours of meticulous preparation can unravel with a single misstep, a misplaced pass, or a cruel bounce. In a sport obsessed with perfection, choking often offers imperfection in its rawest form. Every collapse narrates a tale of pressure, pride, and the moment's greatness trembles. For every miracle, there must be a meltdown. For every champion, a casualty. For every dream fulfilled, another that perishes on the very same pitch. Ultimately, choking is football in its purest essence, cruel, unpredictable, and unforgettable. And no matter how painful it becomes, we simply cannot look away.
Andrei Shevchenko must score. He must score. Liverpool are champions of Europe again.
What does it matter if rain comes your way and raindrops patter all day? The rain descending should not make you blue. The happy ending is waiting for you. Take your share of trouble, face it and don't complain. If you want the rainbow, you must have the rain.